Welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller, and
me, Laura McClellan.
Hello, Laura McClellan.
Once was Laura Weller.
We need to talk about our funny-looking glasses and drinks. So if you're not watching on YouTube, Laura and I have both got Kingfisher beer glasses, which are a bit ugly, but they came from India, which is why we got them. And Kingfisher beer is what you have. But what's in it?
We have a luminous liquid as a beverage today. Because it is the dead of winter, we have
And we're all a bit glandy.
We're all a bit glandy, and we have a lot going on at the moment that we need to be healthy for.
Yeah.
So we've got a fake Barocca that I call a Farocca.
It's an Aldi Farocca.
LD Farocca drink. Full of vitamins.
But I'm making Laura have one for the first time.
It's absolutely rank. There's like floaters floating about at the top.
It's just a bit of the stuff.
And it's making me retch every time I drink it. But
I want you to have a sip after every tip. Oh, yes.
No.
Yeah, because then it'll be gone. And I've promised you, if you drink it like a big girl, you can have a chocolate.
Okay.
Okay?
I did say the first few sips that I had, I can feel my brain cells coming alive
Exactly.
again.
And now, look, I'm way ahead of you.
Shall I try a sip now?
Come on, have a sip and don't retch. It's not good luck to retch. That was so small. That's ridiculous. It's a waste of a sip. It's a waste of the
I'm
whole
just
thing.
making sure it goes down. Are you sure that doesn't have iron in it? Because it tastes absolutely vile.
You're
It
not
tastes
doing a very
irony to
nice
me.
ad. If we were being sponsored, Stephen Bartlett's sponsored for the drinks that he has on his podcast. He has to like them. You're doing an absolute injustice to Faroccas, whatever they are.
I'm sure it's doing really good things for my cells.
It's
but
not because you're not
doing...
drinking it.
No, it's not.
We're going to watch that go down. What did we think we'd talk about today in the midst of New Year, New Me, change vibes?
Yeah, we were thinking that not everyone can actually overhaul their life, nor are we saying that's the right thing to do for most people. And actually, some people might be going into the new year thinking, oh no, another year of the same job or the same circumstance, and I can't actually change where I work. I can't change my job. I need to do this to pay the bills. It's not as easy just to go and become an artist or a dancer or something, if that's your dream.
I'm smiling because I'm asking if you're asking for a friend or whether this is you.
So asking for a friend, what do you do when you can't
move on from your job, but you want to, but
you can't. So how can you find meaning? How can you make it work? How can you fulfill your purpose in a place where you feel like you're in the middle stage and actually you're waiting to get in a position where you can move? But you need to make it still feel doable, meaningful now.
And there are loads of people that we work with who are in this position, who do the Purpose Pursuit course, or maybe they've bought the book, #buy the book, but they are aware that essentially they do want to move on from their job. They're not that happy, or it's come to an end, it's run its time, but they've got to stay because they're just not able. Either they don't know yet what to do instead, or they cannot make the jump. Now, there is always, is that definitely true that you can't make the jump? And that's a separate question. But today we're going to assume that there are reasons why these people who we're talking to today particularly feel, right now I can't go. And even if you are beginning to look for another job, it isn't going to be overnight, is it? You could still be months away from moving on. So Laura's asking for a friend because we're hoping that Laura doesn't want to move on for a job but can't. But that could be why we're having this conversation.
Especially if you keep making me do bush tucker trials every week.
Bush tucker trials. The thought of you doing bush tucker trials is one of the best
I can't even watch those episodes.
Ever thought about. I think we need to bring those in. So we thought we could do this in like a 10 thought tippy kind of ways that actually might give people some stuff they can go away, think about and think, if all things have to remain equal, i.e. I'm not leaving my job right now, I don't want to be here, what can I do about the way I feel, what I do next, and even have some sense of transformation even as I stay put? Because we have to live in the real world. And there are loads of people who will say, well, there aren't any good jobs out there. I can't afford to go back to training at the moment. I can't just walk away. I'm the breadwinner, or whatever language you want to use. And loads of people say this to me all the time. So shall we have a think about what some of those things could be?
Let's.
Have a sip of your drink first.
Okay, here we go.
Come on. Big sip, big girl. That was not a big sip, not a big girl. Okay.
Sorry.
So the first one is, Number one, name the real stuckness and not just the surface level one. So instead of, I can't leave because the job is stressful, or I can't leave because my circumstances are such. What can we think about the thing is that feels impossible? So sometimes, even if you've got to stay, the reason you think you've got to stay isn't the real one. So you might say, I can't leave because I've got responsibilities to my family, or I can't leave because I need to earn this amount of money, or I can't let down the people I work with, or I haven't been here long enough and it won't look good on my CV. I just want to say to you, really, is that really the reason? So that's the first thing. Like, do you really have to stay because of that? Or is there another reason underneath the stuckness, which could be like, I actually don't know what I'd do instead. I can't bear the thought of quitting. I haven't got the courage at the moment to step out. I'm worried about what people are going to think. There are loads of reasons why we stay, and I think it's important to fully honestly know.
Is there a reason that you've found crop up again and again and again, like maybe the most with people who've gone through the Purpose Pursuit or people you coach?
I think sometimes it is the courage aspect. A lot of people say they can't go. Can I just be clear? There are some people who really do have to stay. They've got to see out probation. They've got to be there longer. They do need to stick it out because there's too many moving parts in the rest of their life. But there are some people where, and myself included, we can say things sometimes, can't we? Well, I can't do that because I haven't got that agency over my own life at the moment. I've got to be there for X, Y, Z. When we might be using that as an excuse because we don't want to fail, we don't have the courage, or we feel like if I move away from this current role or job or career, I'm quitting. And there's a whole load of emotion that's going to come with that, and they haven't yet got the courage for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will say it's financial, and it is. Sometimes people will say it's financial, and it isn't. And that's a bit more of like the surface layer reason that's being given, but there's something else underneath the surface. And so if you are in this spot, I think it's quite important to really diagnose and be honest with yourself. Why am I saying I can't leave? Is it circumstantial? Or is there something a bit more to this about the way I'm seeing my life? That's one of the big things that coaching does, is try to help people get to the root of issues of why we're behaving how we are. But I think we can even do this with ourselves sometimes if we ask ourselves the right questions. And so the first thing I would say is, even if you have to stay, be sure that what you're saying is the reason is definitely the reason, and it's not fear. It's not fear of failure. I just want to say more widely on this point, I don't know why we think, I've said this 100 times, but I don't know why we think it's better that somebody does a job for life. A lot of my generation, I'm older than you, it's this feeling, I'm a doctor, so therefore I've got to be a doctor for the whole of my adult career, which it's fine if you want to be. Or I'm a teacher, so therefore I will stay in teaching until I retire. It doesn't make you any less a brilliant teacher, doctor, add in any other descriptive word for a career you want, because you didn't do it for the entirety of your working life. And I genuinely don't know why we've decided that to do the same thing for the whole time makes us better.
Yeah, and oftentimes you've referred to it when I was learning to drive and doing my driving test as, when you're young, the idea of like learning something new happens every single day when you're at school. Every single lesson you're expanding and you're like learning new things. You're going back to square one. You fail a lot.
You watch children's faces when you're a teacher and they're in year 6 look at you like, what is she talking about? And then you see, like, over the course of a couple of lessons, like the penny drops. Adults don't get that quite as much.
No, and actually there's potentially that, like, when you learn to drive, you then have to, it's really hard because you have to basically feel like you're 9 again. And it's like, it's all sorts of emotions. But I wonder whether there's an element of that, of if you're approaching 50 and you're like, actually, I want the last part of my career to be different. You feel like you have to go back again. And actually, do you want to do that? Are you scared of doing that? And it's the learning process all over again.
Yeah, totally. And having to come back down to being perhaps more junior in something again. Maybe there's that element, and there will be a financial element to that, of course. But I think sometimes we're a bit binary, where we think, well, I don't know, let's say you're 45 and you want to be a midwife, and that would mean retraining. Are there ways of looking at this that are less dramatic, or are there ways of you doing this over a longer period of time while still working? Or you only have one glorious life, is it worth doing? Like, only you can make that decision. But I think we've got to sometimes engage with looking on 10 years and thinking, would I have done that differently if I wasn't being in those constraints? But there are sometimes constraints, and we have to make our peace with them and think, now isn't the time. My family haven't got the bandwidth. I haven't got the capacity, and we've got to name it. All I'm trying to say is be sure that what you're naming it as is what it really is.
Yeah.
Same goes for both of us when we say, I can't, or it just has to be this way. Sometimes I know I'm doing that, and it's perhaps about control or something completely different.
Does that mean we have to take a drink now?
Yes, you do, because I've had one anyway. I feel a little bit burpy. From my fizzy Farocca. Laura, no, nothing went in your mouth.
I did. No, I have a small mouth.
No, you don't. You can't say things like that aren't true. You don't. Right, look at this. For the purposes of the audio listeners.
I'm trying my best, Hannah.
No, I don't agree. No, you aren't. I don't think you are. Sometimes you need someone to tell you the truth. Right, next one. So, do the 2 jobs audit. This is where you say, what does that mean, Hannah?
What's the 2 jobs audit, Hannah?
Well, we never have just the job, right? You have the job you paid for. So what are you paid for to do? What's your job?
To be your EA.
Yeah, EA. You are my executive assistant. You do loads of project management and all sorts of things. But then there is another job you do alongside that, which is managing your thoughts, emotions, and the energy of your job. What are the emotions, thoughts, and energy of your job? And that is actually a really good question, because then you can think, well, which job is actually exhausting me? Is it the job, or is it the management of my, what word did I use? Energy, emotions, and thoughts around the job. Yeah. So let's say you are a nurse. Is it the nursing that is exhausting you, or is it your emotions, your energy, and your thoughts around that job, i.e. possibly the type of nursing or the environment or the particular team or the particular ward that's creating extra exhaustion, and it isn't even the job? So let's just keep that example going, because I don't want you to say nasty things about me. Let's say you are a nurse. Nursing involves caring. Nursing involves checking on people's medications, giving medication, liaising with doctors. Let's say you actually like that work, but you work in a ward that is always understaffed. Okay, maybe you work in a ward where your boss, the sister, or whoever it is that you're relating to, isn't actually very nice to you. Maybe you are given a really raw deal with shifts, perhaps you feel, and there is a lack of organisation there. Maybe the particular type of nursing you're doing, you feel you're on a plateau and you're like, I know how to do this and it's not very exciting anymore. Does that therefore mean necessarily that nursing has come to an end? Or is it all of this other stuff, the other part of the job, the part 2 of the job, that is actually the more exhausting part? Or is it not that actually the team's great, the conditions are great, but the work that you do exhausts you? I think we have to... That's why some people can make sideways moves and it isn't even about their career. And they might need to think, maybe I'm just not in the right environment or not quite the right role, but it isn't about completely going back to square one. Sorry, just having another little bit of my drink, which I know
boosting your vitamin C.
Just boosting my vitamin C. So the question is, do you need a new job? Do you need new boundaries? Or do you need a new story about your job for now? I.e., if you can diagnose a difference, perhaps it helps you cope a bit better. Perhaps you can start to think, do you know what? I'm going to focus on the bit I can do, the bit that I do enjoy. I'm going to try and get some of this clutter or other stuff a little bit less in the forefront of my brain. How can I build a bit of distance with some of these more difficult team members? Or how do I approach someone around the rota or the jobs I'm given? But I do think separating the difference between the emotions and the thoughts and the energy and the actual nuts and bolts of the job is quite important. Because there's working for me in terms of the stuff you do.
Yeah.
And then there is the whole side of the job, which is dealing with me, the conditions of your job. So you could be EAing somewhere. It is so hard. I make you drink horrible drinks and then bully you about it. But you could do the same job somewhere else and it could be better, worse, the same. And so I think it's important to decide, am I going to completely throw this whole thing out? Or maybe there's some tweaks I can make along the way. Okay, next one. Stop trying to have an opinion. Oh, no, sorry.
I was hoping you were going to forget.
Oh, well, I don't forget. Stop trying.
It's not getting better, you know.
You've got a long way to go, sorry to say. You're never going to get down that drink. I'm gonna just do a big old swig later. Stop trying to have an epiphany, aim for a 1% clue. This to me is really important. Sometimes people just want something to come out of the sky, and they do get it sometimes, that this is the career I need to be in, this is the profession, this is the thing I need to do. And they're longing for this, like, again, letter from Hogwarts, audible voice from heaven to say, do this. And maybe we need to take the pressure off and look for clues. We talk about this all the time, don't we? Yeah. What are the things that you enjoy? What tiny clues about what you're doing right now in any part of your life? Again, you do this in the book, you do this in my course, that might give you clues to where you want to be going. So moments that you enjoyed, tasks that energized you, or something that you admired in somebody else's job. It's like this, like picking up the clues and finding your way. Like if you think about your job that's evolved loads, you've worked out some of the things that you particularly find enjoyable and energizing. Take out the fact you have to work for me. Take that wonderful fact out for a minute. But what are the clues that have shown you, actually, I'm putting my strengths and talents to work, and you're like, oh, I'm quite good at that and I enjoyed that. What are some of the things you've learned to put you on the spot?
Just kidding. I think what I've learned is that I like being creative.
Yeah, you are.
And I do need time. Like, I'm not great at just being like, bam, on the spot creative. So that's more like style of it. But I love being creative, and I love that I get to do that here. And also I think kind of like some of the systems and organisation as well. That's something I've learnt about myself over the years of like spreadsheets and
you're very good at that. Laura turns any thought into a spreadsheet or a Trello board or something like that. That's an improvement measure. And you like, I think another thing you like doing, I mean you might not, but I think you like the feeling of pleasing clients.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that.
Doing something so they go, oh, Laura's done a great job and she's met our needs and surpassed them. Yeah. That idea of doing a good job.
Yeah, I make like little challenges for myself of see how quick I can reply, see how quick I can turn this thing around, like try and go above and beyond, where I have the capacity and stuff. But yeah, I do really enjoy doing that as well.
And I think until you do some things, you don't realise what things you're going to enjoy more than others, and what things you might not. And I think, again, if you're listening to this and you're like, I've got to stay. So this whole episode is, I've got to stay. Like Laura, you were stuck in a job you don't want to be in. No, let's say you're in a job you're ready to move on from. What clues can you pick up of? Like, even within that job that you have, what are the bits that you do enjoy and what are the bits that you don't? Both of those things are so important to know. There are loads of things I loved about my previous job. Even though I was ready to move on, there were things that I thought, actually, I still want opportunities to do this. It might be in different settings, but I love this bit of my job. And I hope that in every job I have, I can do that. And I've been trying to talk to my middle son, Jude, about this a little bit, rather than what is the profession. Me and my husband, Jude's dad, we were talking to him the other day and saying, it's more about how do you get to bring who you are to that environment, take the pressure off the profession. It's more about that will come. Obviously, you can't be a dentist if you've not done dentistry, but more importantly than that what's the person that you are that you can bring to that environment, and you then go, oh, I've enjoyed that, and I've got to do some stuff I like, and then you hopefully do more of that as the years go by and make better decisions to get closer, rather than this like, you're very lucky if at 21 you're bang in the centre of what you want to do.
There just is such a pressure, isn't there?
Yeah,
to be like, you must know, you must have a career plan. By 30, you must have it all sorted. And rarely, a lot of I had 2 gap years before I did a degree, but loads of my friends who finished before me then were absolutely lost. They'd end up doing a master's just to kind of continue it a little bit and try and buy a bit of time, and are still like figuring it out, which is absolutely fine. I think it's shifting the expectation and the idea that you're meant to know everything. And you've really helped me with this, because it's not about finding the right thing. It's about finding the bits that you really enjoy and even the bits that you don't. And then for your next job, you go more of that, less of that. And then over time, it will correct you into where you should be.
And recognising, and by the way, one of the things we could have said at the beginning was that you can have those moments in your 20s, but also you might be having them when you're returning to work from mat leave, and you're like, well, my whole world shifted, so some of the things I loved I don't anymore. There are a lot of people who will say, I've got to go back to work after mat leave, and I don't want to go back there, but I've got to. And sometimes you have to for all sorts of like financial reasons to start with. None of that is wasted. You are evolving and growing as a person, and you will figure out in the return the direction you want to go. In fact, I've got a client who said the other day she's been thinking about this for a while, and it sounds like she's getting ready to go now, that she's worked for a large corporate for a long time, one of the big, the big consultancy firms. And she knows she wants to work in the charity sector with her skills. And the time is coming that she's going to be able to do that. And what a gift she's going to be in that environment for everything she's learned. Even though she's had to wait for it, the rest wasn't wasted. So it's about seeing that whole like lifelong range of thinking. Most of us will be working for 45, maybe 50 years. A lot of us with the way we're aging. That's a lot of times to pivot, to change, to grow, to think, now I'm going to do a bit of this. What's my priority right now? I don't think we should have to stick at something we absolutely hate because it works for our family indefinitely. But this is what we're trying to say today is, what can you do? Which takes me to point 4, but I can't do point 4 till you have a little sip of your disgusting
This is a sacrifice for all the listeners, so they can hear all your tips.
Yeah, thank you. No, you're never going to have one of these again, are you?
No, maybe I will.
Maybe I should have put it with less water, but then it would have been really strong.
I only take, like in general, I'm a tiny sip sort of girl.
But you can't take like 500% vitamin C in a tiny sip. I don't think you can anyway. No. Right, the next one is, how can you use your strengths, i.e. the best bits of your personality, to soften the hard parts of your job rather than to just perform more? So essentially asking yourself, which of my strengths have I completely stopped using at work, and what would a 1% reactivation look like? Sometimes being in burnout is because you're starving your strengths, and sometimes boredom is because you aren't using your strengths. So when you have to do the bits of your job you enjoy less, like interacting with me, how can you use your strengths to help you do those bits? Or which of your strengths do you just think, this is a bit dormant in my life at the moment? What would it look like if I just showed up at work using it? Let's say you've got positivity as a strength. You're a really positive person. You're quite fun, humorous. You're generous with your praise. You like to look for the good. But you, for whatever reason, found you're just not really doing that at work, or you work in an environment where nobody else does that. What about if you go to work tomorrow and you just decide to start doing 5% more positivity with the people around you? What about if you just started to do that and you saw what happened? I guarantee over time that you would see a shift in the people around you and possibly the culture over time, and just the way you see your work. Or a completely different strength. What if you're really good at data, and at the moment you're in a job where you don't get to do much of that? How could you begin to find ways to incorporate that in what you do? Because there always is a way. So I would encourage you to do that diagnostic of your strengths and your personality. There's loads of great tools out there. We use Clifton Strengths. There's also a tool
in the Purpose Pursuit out
now. There's like a whole quiz you can do in there to help you think about your strengths. And then stop and think, how do I use this more effectively in the hard parts of my job to make the hard parts better? I.e., anything we're struggling with, we can almost gamify by using our strengths some more. So I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you think of something that you would normally enjoy less that you have found a way of making better because you've found a way to use your strengths?
Yeah, I have to use like a piece of software to sort some of our expenses and invoicing out for like a certain client that we have, and it's just really tricky. I call it fiddly diddly. It's very fiddly diddly.
It's more than fiddly diddly.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's a bit time consuming. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's not really difficult. It's
a necessary evil.
There's so many moving parts, so many things, and we are quite busy, and there's so much going on that sometimes it can feel like, oh my goodness. But oftentimes, I think it's using my drivers and strengths together of kind of like, this is a necessary thing, and actually I've got achiever as my top strength. Let's see how quickly I can do this. And I'll make it easy for myself beforehand by trying to be as organised as possible. Everything you send me in terms of like receipts, invoices, I'm like, I'm going to stash that all away and make it so easy for myself. I'm going to try and do it as quickly as possible, and then afterwards I'm going to do a nice task as a little treat.
That's really good.
But
a drink, a sip of a drink.
A drink as my treat. But and I think just thinking this is important. It means Hannah gets paid. Yeah, and that's enough.
Essentially
for me.
Means we both get paid. Actually,
pays my bills.
Yeah, pays the bills. But no, that's again like putting something in. Putting something into action that helps you do something hard. I've definitely found loads of workarounds with the stuff I don't enjoy so much that help me get them done. Even just thinking about the environment you're in, the time of day you do them, gamifying them, putting competition into it. There's all sorts of ways we can soften the harder parts of our jobs. And even if those hard parts are a really difficult person, again, I don't mean this in like a flagellating, slog yourself kind of way. But there was a time in a previous job where I thought, well, what about if I can just in this learn about how I don't want to lead when I'm around somebody who's leading in a way that I'm finding difficult? How do I just reframe it for now and use my strengths to help me cope, knowing that this won't be forever? I won't be in this situation forever. So how do I handle what I can't have to deal with right now? Okay, next one. What's your blind spot trigger and identify it? Every job has things that poke your blind spots, i.e. does it make you people please? Does it make you avoid things? Does it make you overwork? Do you find yourself not asking for help or being overly responsible? So whatever your blind spot is, I think for me, I can people please, I can overwork, I'm not necessarily an avoider. And then the question to ask yourself is, a bit like what I've just led into, what's my job actually teaching me about myself? As in, whilst I'm still here, what can I learn about my own blind spots? What is the stuff about me that I can grow in this time while I'm waiting to move to something else I want to do? That massively helped me in my final year before starting the business. It was a definite decision of my mind to think, I'm either going to just count down the time. I was actually doing this thing where I'd worked out how many days over a whole year I'd got left. Wow. And every single day I was colouring in a square, like on a piece of squared paper. And I just kind of stopped one day and thought, that is no way to live. That there's nothing wrong with countdown to exciting things, but to literally be thinking, I just want to get through. I needed to think about, how can I grow? Like, what part of me struggles here and how do I grow in that area so that I'm in a more mature, better place for wherever I'm going next. What do you think out of those things is one of your triggers? Like, what are one of the things you do?
Probably a bit of people pleasing too, which means I don't ask for help.
And you like to do things perfectly.
Yeah.
And what about when we get a not very nice email?
Do you know what? I've grown quite a lot.
You have?
Because we got a not very nice email recently.
Yeah.
And it was not my fault at all.
No, it wasn't. For the record, it wasn't.
It really wasn't.
No, it was a difficult, funny fish, as some people would call them.
And I actually, rather than a few years ago, I probably would have cried.
Yeah,
really would have let that get to me. I would have thought I've done something wrong, not good enough. It would have really played into like an identity thing. And actually this time I was like, no, I'm not going to let it impact me. It's totally fine. And even if I had done something wrong, it still doesn't deserve rudeness or anything like that. And so I think you really helped me with this. But yeah, you're right. Knowing what your tendencies are, what your blind spots are, can really help you just find meaning.
It can, because then when you think it's about to be triggered, you can almost think, right, here we go. I can either really be hurt or upset by this, defend myself, blah, blah, blah. Or I can just think, I don't have to do that. I have control and agency to not waste it on I also had a not very nice email in the same week, didn't I? You're not just being cheeky, Hannah, you're being downright rude. That's what it said. All I'd done was send some like messages to people I'm connected to on LinkedIn about the book. I don't think I was rude. Definitely not rude.
Maybe
definitely cheeky. Definitely cheeky, but not rude.
No.
You've got to be brave sometimes.
You do.
But that hasn't knocked me either in the way that sometimes people's comments would. It would have knocked me more if it was somebody I knew more, if their opinion mattered more. But then maybe that's fair enough. It should matter more then. So well done us for not letting people whose opinions shouldn't matter not affect us.
Let's celebrate with a drink.
Let's celebrate with a drink. I'm going to have a big swig so that I'm way ahead of you.
You know, that sip tasted like squash. That was actually okay.
Oh, good. Well done.
Thank you.
It does make me go a bit retchy. Don't love it either, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so next one. Future you, okay? If December 2026 could whisper one thing to you right now, what would they say? And this is just a really simple one. If you can imagine yourself a year away from now, and this is where you are at, and a kind future version of you is telling you, how do you handle this? Or what would a friend say to you? Any of those kind of language. How can you give yourself some kind advice from the future to help you handle where you are right now? So those could be things like prepare quietly, or you don't have to be brave all at once. You are closer than you think. But things that you would like to hear from the future that remind you to have that future focused perspective so we don't get just stuck and bogged down. Because if you do have to stay, there are still things we can do while we're there. And that's part of what I want to talk about in a minute. So I don't want to say a lot more on that other than to just reflect on what would you want a kind future version of you to be saying to you about now, as in this is not wasted, this is how you make the best of this time that you are in, that you've got to do. Number 7 was make your job 10% more livable. And that is not just about using your strengths. It's about if it feels very consuming and you're like, I've got to stay in this job, but it is really quite overwhelming. So maybe like we could even think about David as an example when he was on other rotations that were really, really challenging. Not where he is now, but ones which have been like, oh gosh, this feels like just getting through. What makes the current situation 10% easier, lighter, or more humane? So I'm going to give some examples and then you might be able to add some. Thinking about a small shift in workload, one clearer boundary, asking for clarification instead of guessing, i.e. if one of the things that's really stressful about your job is you're not clear on your objectives. I have a client at the moment who said to me, he's really senior and he's like, I'm floundering because I can't seem to get clarity on what I'm actually supposed to be doing. A 5-minute transition ritual before or after work, that's a really good one for when your job's really big and heavy. And a tiny gratitude practice, which is scientifically proven to help boost your sense of agency because it feels like something you're in control of. So it's not saying that these are solutions, but they might give you a bit more stability as you are waiting. So what could make your current job 10% easier, lighter, or more humane? So one of the things I did when I was in my previous work and there were decisions being made that I no longer had agency in, but I was still working there. A simple practice for me was thinking about, what is in my control and what am I here to do? And actually just literally making peace with the fact that certain things were no longer in my control and that was okay, really helped me cope. Because otherwise I could feel myself getting het up about stuff, like I don't agree with this decision, but I hadn't got a seat at the table anymore. So what was the point in that? I couldn't, it's like, what's in my control to do something about, well, I've got things that I have got projects to do and I'm going to focus my attention there rather than focus my attention on what I can't change. That 10%, that made my job 10% more livable, 100%, 10%. I don't know whether you can think of any of your top of your head, but was there anything David was able to do to make it more livable rather than just got to get through this?
Yeah, I was just thinking one like small but practical thing was convenient things.
Yes.
So for example, the cooking and eating were absolutely out the window, when he's doing like 100-hour weeks.
Yeah.
So he would get like meal prep things like for gym bros through the post box. And actually that was like, for him, that was like self-care in a way. And I had to really encourage him, like, this is really important.
Really important.
But that would be a bit of a lifesaver for him. So making, when
you're
going
like, out for a walk, that can be a 10% more livable.
Absolutely.
Leave your desk.
And things like focusing when you need to go to sleep. Being quite firm on your boundaries, that makes it more livable, because if you're not rested, how are you going to manage day to day and things like that? So I think if there's things that make it more convenient, I'd encourage to do that. Do whatever you can.
When we were living at my mum's care home for those 2 weeks, which obviously is not our job, but it was so intensely challenging, one of the things that did make it a little bit more livable was we had a really nice M&S lunch.
Yeah.
I would drive up the hill to where the M&S food was, and I bought us this really lovely prawn thing that we liked. And it's like just forever going to remind me of that season. But it was like, this is a little thing that makes this a little bit better, more bearable. And maybe in the hard seasons, we have to think about what are the tweaks, what are the things you can do that get you through the really difficult days, rather than, again, you haven't got the capacity to change everything. So what can I change is a really, really important thing. And I know this isn't about settling. This conversation isn't about going, we'll suck it up. But it is about, in the waiting, how do you make the waiting more meaningful, more livable, and more like you have control over it? It feels so good to feel like you've got some sense of agency over what you're doing, rather than just, I'm a victim of a situation that I can't get out of, I can't change anything, and I won't change, therefore, anything. Another thing we can do is to build the leaving muscles quietly, i.e. thinking about getting ready to leave. So I don't mean I'm checking out, but doing some things in the background that get us ready, like building courage, tolerating the uncertainty, starting to write some things about yourself. So going through the Purpose Pursuit book or the course gets you ready to be ready. It gets you ready to talk about yourself really positively, to be interview ready. Some of you might be listening to this and you have been in that same role for a long time, and so you are not interview ready. It's not, you don't know how to talk about yourself. That's some of the stuff you can do. You can be asking for help. You can be making connections with people. You can be talking to people who are in other spheres or fields that you want to move into. And you can do that without checking out the building. It can be like a bit of a side project, rather than I've quitted and I'm here in body, but I don't think that's a good representation of ourselves to do that. So maybe you could do some things like tiny habits, like bullet pointing the achievements of the day, like what did you enjoy, what did you manage to get through, asking people for advice, applying for a low stakes thing, like that might be an additional responsibility where you are, or a volunteer role, something that is just an addition. Or have a look at some job descriptions out there and start to see what there is, so that you don't just think, there's nothing out there I could do because I haven't got XYZ experience. The number of people, by the way, I know who have shifted into roles where on paper they may have thought, I haven't got everything I need. What have you got to lose by trying? Because you might be a wildcard candidate that actually, because of your different types of experiences, you can bring a whole different perspective. I know somebody who was a head teacher for years, and somebody I've coached, and he is now the head of a marketing company. And he's done a whole pod on how I've taken my leadership and my experiences from that environment and moved it into this, rather than seeing it as a completely wasted and non-connected experience.
Yeah. Do you have any examples from your own sort of like crossroads when you left your previous job, but you had to stay there for a while, of how you did this?
Yeah, I think I got more boundaried around my work hours so that I had some time to think. And I think in the background, I did some training. In the background, I began to think about where I'd like to be next. I learned about setting up a company, what that would involve. I met with some people for coffees who I thought would be honest with me, give me some helpful advice, and started to gather some of that stuff. Because that's really useful to do while you're still in something. It can also give you energy for the job you've got, actually, because you're starting to feel a little bit more alive with what's next. So those are some of the things I did. And that was all then banked and ready for when the transition time came. I had a definite 2 to 3 year transition period. Some of it was like a reduction of hours at work. There was a year of like, I think the change is coming. So for most people, it's not like they go in one day and go, oh, I think the change is coming, I'm quitting. You know, there is a process for most of us, unless we're totally financially free, where we have to think about it over time. So I don't want anyone to listen to this and think I just waltzed out one day. There was definitely a process of letting go. And I was nervous. I was nervous about not having my income and all the rest of it. So a couple more things. Gratitude that doesn't gaslight you, i.e. rather than I should be grateful, I've got a job, I should be grateful in this climate, I'm still earning. That's really, I should be grateful, just makes it feel like another thing to bash over your head. And to be honest, sometimes I do that to myself, or I'll do it to my kids, and I'll say things like, well, you should be grateful, look at all these opportunities you have, and you know, I didn't have X, Y, Z. But instead of like should, it can still be about being grateful, but reframing it as what's a small thing about this job that made today more bearable? What's something that I can be grateful for? It could be a colleague. It could be a quiet moment. It could be a patient if you're a doctor. It could be a task you enjoyed. It could be the fact you've got stability. It could be a paycheck that supports that goal, i.e. that was what it was for me in the in-between. There was a job I did as a consultant in the switchover period, which was definitely not my ideal work, but it released time to me whilst I got paid to do that, to have a bit more time to explore what I wanted to do. And I was grateful for it because it grew my time. And so although it wasn't the thing it wasn't like, yay, this is my dream role. It was, I can be grateful. I've got some income coming in this transitional period. So again, I think rather than looking at it as this whole balloon, everything about this is awful, what is the things within this that I can be grateful for that made today better? What was the good in today? What was the thing that was good? Even when you're in really tough work circumstances, I do believe there are things out there if we're going to look for them, even in the hardest times. I imagine for David, Laura's husband is an anaesthetist, so that's the type of doctoring he's doing. I imagine some days are incredibly hard, but there might just be an interaction with a patient where he feels appreciated, or the patient's funny, or there's a nurse he works with he or she's, you know, they've got a great connection, that just thinks, oh, that just made today that little bit better than had they not been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Often it's patients or some of his colleagues that can kind of like lift him through a week, even, of just like, that felt meaningful, that felt like I was meant to be there.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel worth it when it is really tough.
And it can just be, it might be a 5-10 minute part of the day, but we've got to cling on to those.
Yeah. Or his lunchtime.
Totally. Or the lunchtime, or the nice lunch that you've made for you can be grateful for. All those things. And this, again, isn't about being, berating ourselves, we're so lucky, we should be grateful. It is actually, there are always things to be grateful for. And there are always things that make our days better, as well as the things that make them harder. And I think sometimes when we're struggling, we can just feel and see the hard things, the difficult interactions, the overwhelming nature, and that funny conversation, or the person who just gave you a bit more of the time of day. We miss them, or the nice email, or the gratitude for what we do. So I'd really encourage people for that. And then the final thing I'd say is to think about what might help your brain begin to think about exit is coming, change is coming, like micro exit, we've called it. So that's like, maybe you change your commute route as a bit of a sign to yourself that change is afoot, or rearrange your work desk. I know these things sound funny, but it's about bringing a little bit of shift into your mentality. Stop saying my career and say my current role, because again, that creates this feeling of, I'm not permanently attached to this. Buy a notebook that says next chapter on it, and start writing some thoughts in it. Buy the Purpose Pursuit book and start to do some of the exercises in there. And put something on your calendar for 3 months from now, and see it as a reassessment moment, and keep doing that, because you should be making progress. There's definitely progress you can make if you want to. So I guess what we're saying is, if you feel stuck and you can't leave, as in you don't just feel stuck, there are reasons why you've got to stay. The time isn't wasted. Get busy changing your mindset. Think about some of the things we've said today. Make shifts and changes. Look for the good. Do that sort of learning in the background, or that investigation in the background towards where you're going next. And find ways to make what you're currently doing so much better. And I feel for you, it's not easy when you have to stay when you want to go. But I definitely think, somebody said to me the other day actually, like, my son Jude is not having an easy time at uni. And our friend James said to him, you're going to have to learn this here or somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought that was really good. I.e., if you don't learn what you've got to learn in this, I'm struggling in my job, you will learn it somewhere else, or you'll face the same hurdle and you'll be at just the same point of maturity. And I thought that was such a helpful thing. It was like one of those like loving truths, which are not always easy to hear. That doesn't mean you have to stay everywhere awful. And that wasn't what James was saying to Jude, but he was saying there's something in this to learn, that if you don't learn it, you will just have it in a different iteration somewhere else. And maybe as we finish today, we could think about that, you know, what is it to learn? What is there for you to learn that otherwise you might just find yourself learning somewhere else instead?